Yesterday we were looking at the Battle of Gettysburg. We got through day 1 and day 2 and began day 3. Do you remember who was the man that Lee selected to lead the charge into the middle of the Union line? Pickett, George Pickett, commonly known as Pickett's Charge. And I believe I told you yesterday of how Lee had tried to soften up the middle by using artillery, shooting cannon, but they miscalculated and fired over the heads of the artillerymen that were up there on Cemetery Ridge, so that when Pickett began to charge with his men, the Union artillery had not been knocked out as the Confederates thought. And so they opened up on these men that were charging across this open field. The high point, in fact this is called the high point of the Confederacy, was reached by General Armistead, who led the charge up into the middle and was able to actually capture a cannon up on that ridge for a short time before he was overwhelmed by Union soldiers.
If you're at Gettysburg and you find like an artifact from the war or something, like the actual war, aren't you supposed to like leave it there or something?
Like if you find a shell casing or something,
yeah.
You're not going to find anything.
Oh.
That's been so combed over for over 100 years. If you found something, probably somebody else dropped it.
Uh-huh.
I would guess. That maybe so, but if you find a shell casing, I'm sure that it doesn't apply to that. But I don't think you're going to find anything. It's been too long. Too many people gone over that ground. This is a painting of Pickett's charge because it's folded here. The picture I have, that part didn't come out, but you got to kind of get a sense of how many men are involved as they're charging up the hill. Maybe get a little bit of that. Here's some other paintings that have been done. This is General Armistead. One of the things he did is so that his soldiers could see that he was leading the charge. These generals just didn't sit back and say, okay, you guys go ahead. They were out there leading it, and he put his hat on his saber and held it up high so all of his men could see it and led the charge. Here's another painting of the same thing. And let's see. This is called the high water mark of the Confederacy, then, when Armistead and his men were able to actually capture a Union position up on Cemetery Ridge for a short period of time. Here's another painting of Armistead having captured that Union cannon during Pickett's charge. Here's another painting called the High Tide. Here's a painting of the Union Army, the perspective of them. It's called Don't Give an Inch, as they're holding off the Confederate charge. The blue here represents the Union soldiers. You can see a lot of them are massed down here at the end because of the previous days' attempts by the Confederacy to flank the Union. So there are a lot less soldiers here in the middle. Lee was right about that. But not taking out the artillery was a crucial error. And here's the Confederate Army concentrated attacking the Union forces there. So what was the result? Well, Pickett, after several assaults, was ordered by Lee to go again, to lead an assault on the Union position again. And Pickett replied, "I have no army left, General." In reality, all 15 of Pickett's regimental commanders were casualties, together with about 3,000 men killed, wounded, or captured. Pickett lost nearly half his division in that assault. Lee didn't realize until Pickett told him that it had been disastrous. Well, the result, and in fact, after the battle, Lee rode among the troops as they were withdrawing, saying, "It's all my fault. It's all my fault." A rather sad commentary on this one battle for a man who had been so valiant and had been so smart about how he had conducted his army prior to this. And by not listening to Longstreet, who wanted to simply wait and fight a defensive battle, he in fact put the Confederacy in jeopardy. This one mistake, if you will, that he made in his ideas about battle. So Lee withdrew 2 days later to Virginia. Now, at this point, after the third day of fighting, Meade certainly had the advantage, but he didn't do anything about it. Lee expected a counterattack by the Union Army, but Meade declined to do so. He was apparently too exhausted, or he felt his army was too exhausted to pursue Lee, and so Lee withdrew back into Virginia. Meade did not even pursue him, and therefore lost another opportunity to bring an end to the war, because certainly that might have happened if Meade had gone after Lee. On the other hand, the South would never again have the strength to launch a major offensive. They lost too much. The two sides of the battle suffered 50,000 casualties between them. Perhaps one of the most ironic entry in the grim roll of battle dead was Private Wesley Culp of the 2nd Virginia Confederate States of America, fighting for the Confederacy. He was a native Pennsylvanian who cast his lot with the South. He found out there were Northerners who were fighting for the South based on principle. Culp was killed at Gettysburg on his father's farm. Silent battlefield of Gettysburg. Those are veterans of Lee's army who survived and were captured. Now, remember I told you that the reason why Lee thought it was so important to invade the North at this juncture was partially because of what Grant was doing in Vicksburg. And so we're going to return to Vicksburg next to find out that what was going on at Gettysburg at the same time, Vicksburg had some wrapping up as well. And we'll get back to that after we finish looking at Gettysburg one more time by using a computer-generated program on CD that shows us how the battle proceeded. So we want to take time to look at that. I think you'll find that to be very interesting and instructive. Got to get it set up here. Got to click on just the right thing. Oh, I forgot to do something. I've got to set it up to show what's on my computer. There you see the states. Apparently that was the wrong place.
Gettysburg. Battle down.
And what's going to do is show you the movement and everything
As dawn breaks on the
And
morning of July 1st, 1863,
according to the time.
division of
Read
Confederate
what
soldiers under the
it says here. You can hear reading it as well.
marches east down the
But you're going to see a clock in the corner showing you the time, moving faster than real time, but you can see how the armies are moving according to the time frame.
But local militia is not what Heath's men would be. Veteran Union cavalrymen, under the command of General John Buford, have taken up positions west of town and are expecting the Confederates. As Heath's men come into range, Union Lieutenant Marcellus Jones of the 8th Illinois Cavalry takes a carbine from one of his troopers and fires a shot. The battle has begun.
So you see the blue is the Union. That's where they're arrayed. You can see up here in the top the clock. 8:30 a.m. Here comes some Confederate soldiers. This direction, they're pushing the Union back. So just half an hour, the Confederacy has been pretty successful at pushing the Union back, although they've reached a stalemate here. On the bottom there, it tells you what's going on.
Confederate advance. As lead elements of the Union approach Gettysburg along the Gettysburg Road south of town. The Union First Corps removes the exhausted population just as the Confederates press the attack.
So the Union got a little pushback here. That group of soldiers kind of got left there by themselves.
The Union First Corps has stopped the Confederate attack west of town.
These guys
For
are
a moment,
captured.
all settles over the battlefield as both sides bring up reinforcements. Confederate forces arrive in the town and begin taking up positions in the high
That's he really is. Yeah, attack there. Attack there.
See how over here they were attempting to flank, but Union forces came to prevent that.
With assaults launched from north and west of town.
I'm just trying to play ball fast.
Fresh division of Confederates arrived from the northeast of town and assaults the right end of the Union line.
Notice the offensive right there. Here's where they're driving through town.
Thousands of Union troops fall into Confederate hands as the Federal Army retreats through town heading towards Cemetery Hill.
Oh yeah, that's right. Pretty good, everyone.
Okay, this point is looking pretty good for the Confederate Army as it
As the sun set on
gets
July
late in the
1st,
day.
1863,
They've driven the
General Lee assessed
Union Army
those events.
through
Although his
Gettysburg,
generals had disobeyed
forced
his
them
orders
to retreat.
to avoid a general
Unfortunately, they
invasion.
retreated up on top
His
of
men had
hills,
fought hard
which gave them
and
an
had driven
advantage.
the Federals from the battlefield, inflicting heavy casualties and taking many prisoners. However, he could not be completely satisfied as he observed the tattered Union troops settling into position on the high ground south of town. Lee knew that reinforcements would arrive and transform the Union position on Cemetery Hill into a formidable defense.
You saved yourself because you ran away. So,
Day two.
let's get ran away from this thing.
By the afternoon of July 2nd, nearly all of Lee's army had arrived on the battlefield and taken up positions on the hills and ridgeline south of town. The Fishhook formation and the high ground gave the Federals a decided advantage, but Lee was determined to stand and fight. He ordered General James Longstreet to lead the main attack on the left end of the Union line. Soon, Confederate cannons were blasting the Union defenses, as wave after wave of Confederate soldiers poured out of the woods along Seminary Ridge. When the fighting concluded on the left end of the Union line, the scene of hostilities shifted rapidly to the other end of the battlefield. Confederate General Richard Ewell launched an attack on Culp's Hill that was followed by an attack on Cemetery Hill. Lee's men fought into the night, attempting to drive the Federals off the high ground.
So one thing I wanted to point out, at the end of the day, the first day, it was getting late, but Early had the opportunity to keep pushing the Union Army back and may have been able to attain a victory. But because of the lateness of the day, he decided not to pursue it. But he had them on the run and might have been able to accomplish a lot. So it was too late for Early. Oh, I want to show you. This is what's called the fish hook. So this is the ridge on which the Union soldiers find themselves. From Little Round Top down across here, and then over to Culp's Hill forms a hook. So that's called the fish hook. So they're here in order to prevent the Confederates from being able to flank them. That's why they have the hook on the end. Here's Longstreet's men coming up through the woods to Little Round Top. So what's going on? Nothing's happening over in this area. All the concentrated effort over on the flank. Now you can start to see movement of Union forces to reinforce the flank.
Take his uniform, take his uniform, and then
Here's where Chamberlain tells them to fix bayonets and charge down through the woods. Now we're starting to get action over on the right flank. As Union troops are moving over here, the opportunity is there for the Confederates to attack Culp Hill. Just move them. They're still fighting all the way to 7:30 p.m.
Has Pickett's charge happened yet?
No, it's only day 2, July 2nd. This is still a flanking maneuver on both ends. So you can see the Confederates have taken the majority of Culp's Hill. They have made advances over here on this side and here. And meanwhile, the Union has taken men away from the middle to shore up the ends. Now see, they're still fighting 8:45 p.m. Early put the previous day around 4 p.m. it seems to me there's plenty of daylight left. He could have continued pursuing the federal forces, but didn't. I think that was maybe been a mistake. His troops were tired, but he had the advantage. So they don't stop till 9:30.
Are the names stated?
July 2nd,
Those are division
1863 was the bloodiest Friday conflict.
Or
By the time
I
of
think of any division of soldiers,
20,000
like
soldiers were
the
killed, wounded,
officer in
or
charge.
captured on both sides.
they never had like
These
like
had
lead or
No, it's because they were over the whole
army,
thing.
and had come by the
Even
enormous
Longstreet
reach of
is on
capturing
there
the
because
high
he
ground of
got
the
division
Union
leaders that are under him.
ultimate
So
success
they're
still
already
eluded
separate as
The Union
separate
Army
units.
had used the Fisher formation to its advantage and had rushed reinforcements in at key moments. By the end of the day, the Union Army still remained in firm control of the high ground.
Day 3.
Three back to
Lee's original plan for the third day of the battle called for a coordinated attack on the left, center, and the right end of the Union line. But at approximately 4:30 in the morning on July 3rd, the Union Army preempted Lee's plan. Union cannons reignited the battle, firing at Confederate troops positioned on Culp's Hill. The bloodletting lasted for more than 7 hours, as both sides kept up an almost constant spectacle of cannon and musket fire. Approaching the last hour of fighting, the exhausted Confederates launched their final assault. Other forces attempt to deliver the final attack on Culp's Hill. They pushed the Union line into defensive earthworks.
You see, there's a lot of fighting right here in Culp's Hill. Nothing much going on elsewhere. This is where the fighting is intensified right there.
After nearly 7 hours of fighting on some of the toughest terrain on the battlefield, the Confederates had been forced to relinquish much of the ground they had captured the previous evening. By noon, the sounds of battle from the area of Culp's Hill had faded away. Lee knew that his plan for a coordinated attack was no longer possible. He would have to come up with a new strategy for the final day of battle. That strategy would become known to the world as Pickett's Charge.
And we'll have to pick it tomorrow.
You did something.